What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into TTP Sports, and we'll give ourselves a little Philadelphia Flyers update here tonight. And it has not been pretty, to say the least. Not even saying it bluntly. They have not played their best hockey the past few games, and it really has been showing. The last game we talked about was the Scott Laughton 4-goal game against the Detroit Red Wings, and since then the Flyers have lost 3 straight games Saturday afternoon to the Minnesota Wild, where it really didn't look that eventful. I really didn't pay attention to that game because I was not home. Then they lost last night in a very ugly game to the Detroit Red Wings, and basically the same thing tonight at the Wells Fargo Center in a 7-3 loss against the Los Angeles Kings. And yeah, these past few games have been getting ugly, to say the least. So, before we get into the rest of this, if you are new to the channel and haven't decided to hit that subscribe button yet, I definitely recommend you do decide to hit that subscribe button because it would make me a great deal of service. Recently surpassed over 1,000 subscribers, and now they continue the goal of moving on up and growing the channel even further, and it would do me such a great deal if you do hit the subscribe button. You can also drop a like. You can also leave a comment in the comment section down below. I love to interact with you guys down there. Always a fun time. You can also use the code TTPSPORTS, $20 off your first purchase at SEATGEEK. Great deal. Do not pass it up. You can also follow me over on Instagram and TikTok for shorts and reels and all that good stuff there. So, Fly Guys, not looking pretty. That's basically what it is. I know I've said that a bunch of times here, but it's the obvious. They have not been playing good hockey the past 3 games. They also had, I believe, 3 days off in between the Minnesota loss and the Detroit loss. So is there a rust factor in there? I have no idea. They just haven't been looking sharp. Cam York coming back from injury. Definitely had a very ugly game last night in Detroit, which resulted in him getting healthy scratch today. Emil Andre got back into the lineup, and he didn't have the best of night. Basically, the entirety of the Flyers did not look good today, even though there was a stretch where they were leading the game tonight against Los Angeles 3-2 after Tyson Foerster pots 2 goals in there to get the Flyers a lead. It just instantly comes crashing down when you allow LA to tie it in the dying seconds of the second period, after losing a defensive zone faceoff late in that period, and then just completely falling apart in the third. Defensive breakdowns left and right, leaving Kolosov out to dry. Now, he's definitely not full away from the blame in this game. I would say one of the third goal, honestly, for the Kings that allowed them to tie it. More of a rookie mistake there when you have a very young goaltender basically developing in the NHL. Shot from the point, going completely wide. Kolosov tries to go out there and cover it with his glove. He misses it as Kopitar is pushing the puck, and Kolosov can't cover it. Kopitar manages to bury it in the open cage, and the game is suddenly tied there. So, and were there some other goals that I would say were weak? I wouldn't really say it that much, but overall, it's just to the fact that game just hasn't been pretty. Sam Harrison yesterday in Detroit definitely had a few saves and the goals allowed that he probably would want back, and that was something that Torts brought up today as well, that, we really, since Sam has come back from his injury, been looking for that, one save that the team desperately needs, and we haven't been getting it. So it's just a real mixed bag. Power play can't get going, which is not, surprising whatsoever. The penalty kill has been leaking a little bit of oil, but that still, I think that's the least of their concerns. The penalty kill will get back and rolling eventually. It has been better the past few games. It was basically those previous games to this where it felt like it was leaking oil, but like I said, still the furthest from their issue. They can't win faceoffs in their defensive zone, and basically they go in stretches where, when they're playing games like this, especially where you need to score 5-6 goals in order to win a game, this team just can't survive doing that. That's simply not the case. They cannot. They need solid defensive structure, and the defensive structure the past so many games has just not been there. Way too many defensive breakdowns, way too many turnovers in the neutral zone and the offensive zone, which leads to odd man breaks the other way. There were so many of them last night against Detroit where they pot in on so many. Cam York had a very ugly breakdown and turnover, which resulted in like a 3-on-1 rush for Detroit where they did end up scoring a goal there. Sanheim turned the puck over when the Flyers had the extra attacker out there with the empty net. There were definitely a lot of breakdowns today against the Los Angeles Kings where there were you know, just dumb mistakes. It's dumb mistakes that this team is making. And yes, it's growing pains with a team that is trying to, and yes, this team is not talented enough. We understand this at the end of the day. The expectations aren't out there to go out and complete for a Stanley Cup. That's obviously the case. This team is nowhere close to talented enough. They're nowhere close to good enough against some of these other teams. And LA is definitely one of the better teams in the NHL, and they definitely showcased that in tonight's game. But, and yeah, the Flyers definitely got outclassed in certain aspects, but I kind of wish it wasn't that case last night against a very mediocre Detroit team. And I guess that really isn't saying much about the Flyers because I really said they're not that good of a team on their own rights. But it's too sloppy. There's not much structure. It kind of just feels like it's all over the place right now. And I'm not sure if that's just the type of team that they are. They're going to have their good stretches, they're going to have their very ugly stretches, and that's probably what it is at the end of the day. Basically, I would say the replication of what we've seen so many months now to start this season, where they'll have a week or two where they're playing very good hockey. They basically go out there, they work their asses off, and they work their asses off every single shift. That definitely isn't the case that I'm talking about right here. But, they play hard, they play physical, they find ways to win games, play a solid structure, solid defensively. They chip in goals here and there, and they get solid goaltending. And those are like the few weeks that you see in stretches where they're playing very successful and you're seeing wins get on the board. But when the stretches of ugliness come and when they're losing more than they win, this is probably the hockey that we've been seeing more than not, where they're breaking down a lot in the defensive zone. They're allowing way too many odd man rushes. They're turning the puck over way too much, and they're not getting the saves that they need from their goaltending in order for them to not have to try to win the game 7-5, 6-2, or not 6-4 or something like that. They, like I said, this team just can't win like that. They can't when their structure is this sloppy. When they're turning the puck over way too much, it's not a recipe for success. And the team is not built to play like that. They're built to play low scoring contests, and it simply is the case right there. And they're not playing to that structure. And also, yeah, some guys have definitely died off on the scoring side. Matvei Michkov has definitely been, I would say, invisible the past few games, which is, I guess, to be expected because, let's be real here, he's still a 20-year-old player in the National Hockey League. It's still a very he's going to go through his growing pains. And I think at this point, we're seeing some of the growing pains from Matvei Michkov. And some people want to point out there that John Tortorella isn't playing him that much, where I definitely can see that when you're reflecting it in his ice time. And some people pointed it out yesterday against Detroit. But yesterday, the Flyers took so many penalties in against Detroit last night. And there was like even a very funny moment that everyone knows what I'm talking about at this rate, where I believe it was a penalty that was supposed to be on Detroit. So with the way that the replay showed, I guess it was a trip or a hold that was going to be called or something like that. You see the ref put his arm up and then instantly put his arm back down, and then the Flyers, I guess, confused by the entire mess, they brought the extra attacker out there on the ice and pulled the goaltender because you see the ref's arm go up. You think it's a penalty on the other team. You're going to bring the extra attacker out there to, see what can happen at that case. But then everyone on the ice is so confused. There's almost an empty net for the Flyers, and then Ersson has to get back into the net. Then you have like 7 skaters on the ice, and then you see Torts go, and the players go irate on the bench because, like, how the fuck can you even let that happen when you put your arm up and then you put your arm down? Like, if you're going to call the penalty, call the penalty. Don't change your mind in the instant. And then they had to decipher whether the Flyers were going to get a penalty for too many men on the ice, even though that should have never been the case. Because if you're going to put your arm up, you got to put the arm up. You just can't go back on the penalty in that ensuing second. I've never seen that before in my life, in my personal opinion. And there's definitely some things that happen in today's game where it's kind of frustrating, where you're seeing Matvei Michkov get basically intentionally tripped by Joel Edmondson of LA. And, this was directly after a whistle, a little few seconds after a whistle, where you see Edmondson put his, basically latch his stick right on Michkov's ankle and just tug on him and trip him. to where nothing was called there, and you definitely saw Torts have a little bit of a reaction on the bench. So even though this is just nitpicking stuff here, refs obviously have no impact on the game in these results for the Flyers because they're just playing bad in their own right. There's just other things that do stand out when I am watching these games, but the main thing that has been standing out when watching this team the past three, the game in Minnesota, they just looked lifeless. I think that was the summary of that entire thing. They just didn't really have anything going where you have Marc-Andre Fleury playing out of his mind basically at that point, and you have Travis Konechny having a wide open gaping net where Matvei Michkov is making the save technically on the goal line, putting a stick right there and takes away a goal from Travis Konechny, which was kind of funny in retrospective. Then, like I said, Fleury just making unreal saves, Kirill Kaprizov scoring at the most absurd angles that I've ever seen in my life. That was just, a game they just were not in whatsoever against the Minnesota Wild team that's one of the top teams in the NHL right now. And then Detroit, just a very sloppy game that they probably should have won, especially after they get, going right off the jump with a Travis Konechny goal. You got to find a way to win the game, and especially when you find a way to come back in that third period. Owen Tippett has a very nasty goal. You tie the game up, but then you just instantly break down right after that and find a way to lose the game. And then, especially tonight against the Los Angeles Kings, you're competing with them through two periods, and then one bad mistake ends up in the back of your net at the end of the second period, and then you just can't find a way to do anything. You have a huge power play in the third period, but a chance to tie it after LA takes the lead at the beginning of the period, and then you just completely break down from there. Really not much. Games are just ugly. That's basically it. Top line of Couturier, Konechny, Farabee. There's a lot of chances where they're getting hemmed in their own zone. It's just basically the entire team. There's really no point of singling out specific people. Andre had a rough game tonight coming back into the lineup. York had a rough game last night in Detroit, which was why he got healthy scratched. I think Drysdale and Sanheim were out there for a bunch of goals tonight against the Kings. So just basically bad all around. So kind of frustrating in that retrospective, but I guess that's what's to be expected from this type of team because they're just not good enough at the end of the day. That's basically what it is, and it really shows you how far away this team actually is. Then, a lot of people raised their expectations after last year, and there's definitely a lot of people on Flyers social media that are really irate just because they're not doing anything to make this team better or doing any type of trades whatsoever, and I get to that frustration actually 100%. I definitely understand it. Because, yeah, I would like to see Danny and Jonesy find a way to go out there and get something that this team just needs that could be, helpful now and helpful for the future. Because a lot of people like to point out some other players like, Dylan Cousins from the Buffalo Sabres because that team is a complete dumpster fire. Once again, surprise, surprise. A lot of people point out Dylan Cousins could be a possible trade target. And could the Flyers go after that type of guy? That'd be fun to see if they do that, but we have to see what they do. They're definitely not going to make any trades today with the trade freeze going in before the Christmas holiday. I definitely don't see anything happening right there because I think the trade freeze either happened at 10:59 Eastern Standard Time or it happened at 11:59. So it's either just passed or it's like right near passing at this point. So I really don't expect anything at the end of the day with in terms of trades. Most of their trades that they're going to do is I would assume comes at the trade deadline. That's what I would expect at least. So hopefully that's the case, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. I think Jonesy had an interview the other day that we're talking about how they're not going to be buyers. They're going to be doing the same thing like they did last season and sell. So we'll just find out. We'll just find out what how the plan is going to advance, I would say, going in the next few months. But yeah, it's not like any of the other games for this team gets any easier because, yeah, their schedule, I would say, definitely gets a little bit more difficult as the games go along. I wouldn't say for this Saturday. They do play the Columbus Blue Jackets, so that definitely is an ease right there. But then they're playing the Pittsburgh Penguins on Monday, and Pittsburgh has been very hot. As of late, they've been playing very good. And then they have the Christmas break. They go on their Western California road trip with the Ducks, the Kings, once again, the San Jose Sharks, the Vegas Golden Knights, and then they come back home. Well, not come back home. Their last game of the road trip is in Toronto. And then you go into your January schedule where you're playing some teams like Toronto twice. You're playing Dallas, Florida, the Devils, even though the Rangers are not that good right now, but still, it's gonna be a tough game. You're playing the Devils 3 times in the month of January. That is insane. That I'm even looking at that right now. Just some tough games. Then February, some tough games mixed in there with a 2-week break because of the Four Nations face-offs thing. Then March, that's an insane schedule right there with some of the teams that you're playing. It's just not going to get any easier for this team. So we'll see how the we'll see how the ride goes. But it's probably going to be more of the same where they're going to have their good weeks, they're going to have their bad weeks. It's what this team is, what they are. They're 500. They're a 500 type of team. They're not too bad to where they bottom out. They get a top pick, and I wouldn't say they're that good enough to squeak into a playoff spot. Maybe they do just because the Eastern Conference is that weak. But we'll see. We're still way months away from that. So not pretty the past few games, but we'll see if they can rebound this Saturday at the barn against the Blue Jackets. I won't be home to watch that game. That probably won't be able to recap that game. So in terms of recaps for the next few days, the next one probably won't be until the Eagles game when they play the Commanders on Sunday. And then we'll go over, all that stuff and then what we're doing for, because we probably won't be having that many videos during the holidays here, understandably, but I'll talk to you guys when we get there on Sunday after the Eagles game. So definitely all that stuff. Looking forward to that. But yeah, just not a good watch. Not a good watch lately from the Fly Guys. That's really all there is to say. So appreciate you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to leave a comment in the comments section down below. Don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Does me a great deal of service. And also use the code TTPSPORTS. $20 off your first purchase at SEATGEEK. Great deal. Do not pass it up. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time.